I'm Mary Lindahl from Forensic and Legal Psychology, and I wanted to talk to you about a relatively new method. We need some researchers with it also, research and teaching. So I have used this method in our psychology social policy class that we give each year. We first did it last fall with 30 students and faculty and guests. We had like people from different departments. We're going to use it again this year. So the room is set up like a cafe. You have red checkered tablecloths and flowers and butcher block paper on the tables and refreshments. This is the book that is written about it. They describe it as a powerful social technology for engaging people in conversations that matter. It's been used all over the world, not so much in the United States, in a lot of different settings, corporate settings. This is the impact. These are the different places that they've had them so far. As you can see in North America, there's not much yet. So these are the principles. You set the context, create the space, a hospitable space, and then you have to construct a question, which I'll tell you about. Everyone contributes, and usually you have a diversity of people, not professionals, for example. All professionals have all different types of people. They've used it in Arlington County a couple of times for what they call diversity dialogues for lots of immigrants and people who've been here for a long time to talk about how to make Arlington better. Everyone can contribute in this way, and they tend to contribute more than they do in a setting like this. And you connect the perspectives and listen for other people's ideas. So the method is you choose a host for each table. There's usually 4 or 5 people at a table. You do welcome and introductions, and I'll explain that to you. You have one overall question and then 3 small questions underneath that. So you have 3 rounds of 20 minutes of conversation. And then when the round ends, everyone moves but the host who stays there. So everyone is encouraged to contribute. We have butcher block paper where people doodle, give their ideas on that, and then we post our insights. And then at the end, there's a 20-minute harvest to share the insights with everyone. We put this on the table. This is the etiquette. Focus on what matters, contribute your thinking, listen, link and connect ideas. So the guidelines for the table host is just randomly selected. That person stays when people move the tables, remind people, introduce people. Very quick round of introductions at the beginning each time. And then they briefly share the insights from the table that went before. So this is the way it worked. The introductions, my name is, my work is, that was what we used. You can use a different question if you want. Then this was our overall question. And actually, the hardest part of this is constructing the questions. How can we improve the criminal justice system to more effectively reflect American values? So that was our overall question. Our first round, what are the essential American values applicable to the criminal justice system? So people sat and talked, discussed for 20 minutes, and doodled on the butcher block. And then after that is over, you discuss what struck you from the conversation or what is an insight, and you take a sticky and write your insight on the sticky and put them up on these boards. The different colors are for the different rounds. Then you move tables. The host does the introductions, and the goal at this point is to begin to link and connect ideas. So our second conversational round, where does the criminal justice system currently fall short of embodying those essential values? And so people are listening for patterns, for connections at that point. Then you do the individual reflections again. You can construct these questions, what is emerging, where you need more clarity, pretty much whatever you want to construct. And then again, you write your insights. At the end of the 3 rounds, people get up and get their coffee and refreshments, and you go to the board and look at the stickies and see what some of the ideas have been. And it is amazing how much input and how much enthusiasm we got from this, how people had really a lot of fun. Then you return to your original table and synthesize discoveries and deepen your exploration. Our conversational round 3 was just what if. So people began to give their ideas. At the end, you harvest the collective intelligence, speak in a big group. Sometimes as a representative from a table. You can do it pretty much any way that you find helpful. So the applications, we use it in this class. And since I used it in this class, a couple of other people have used it in their class. And part of my sabbatical, which I finished a year ago, was a research project to use this method for children. As far as I can tell from the literature and being in the World Organization, it hasn't been done with children before. So I'm going to do this with a group of third graders in one of the Washington elementary schools with Sports for Sharing. Have any of you ever heard of that? Sports for Sharing originated in Mexico, and it's now used in the DC schools, some of them. And what I'm using as a backdrop is the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child and participation rights. So the idea of this would be to construct a question that these children who've been studying the UN Convention and citizenship would be able to discuss. So we haven't done that yet. Also, there needs to be research on the effectiveness of the methodology. There's really nothing on teaching or nothing on research, so it would be an interesting new area to work on. So any questions or things that you want to know about how it works, or you think it would be useful to try? Yes? Huh?
I think for some of us in nursing, we teach capstone courses or even in our theoretical, we talk about the healthcare system. So I was already thinking we could just, how can we improve the healthcare system to meet the needs of older adults and diversity and all the health disparity issues. So does the book help us, or do you have?
Yes, I have materials you can use and the book. There's also a website which gives you a lot of ideas. And also, I managed to get a consultation with the president of the organization, because no one had done it in academics before. So he gave me a lot of ideas also. Yeah, and just constructing the questions so that they're open-ended enough for people to discuss. But it's amazing how every single person in the room participated, including shy people who usually don't say anything. Yes?
Do you see this as a one-day intervention in your class? Is that how that fits?
We use it as our last class, and we're trying to teach the methodology for policy, because they've used this in a number of companies where companies are failing, for example, and they get people together from different departments. They are much less defensive when they do it this way. So just for us, we've used it just this way. Yes.
I went to a seminar that was given by the VA on mental health issues for veterans, and they used this format for the whole day of the workshop and purposefully set us up in groups where there were individuals, just like you said, with all different backgrounds.
All kinds of diversity.
It was an amazing day. And at the end of it, the woman that was the moderator brought all of the ideas together, and it was shocking to see how much work was completed in about 6 hours of time with all those different individuals. And it was a great experience.
Yeah, it really is collective wisdom. It's amazing that it hasn't been used more often, but the people who started it have just written this one book, and it's really not in academics yet. But I think it would be really fun to. I mean, when I work with the children, I think it's going to be really interesting to see what they think about things. So we're setting that up at the moment. Go ahead.
I was going to ask if you purposely select people, like do group people together so that you get that diversity of occupations, gender?
Yeah, we let the students select. They can bring like a friend, or we had people like our deans came, Jim Ryerson came, a couple of criminal lawyers came. So you have some people who are, but you don't want too many professionals because they'll take it over. And so we just had people's friends came. And it was interesting. For example, Dr. Dole was at one table, the head of our department. And by the time he got done, he's like, I think we should check the whole thing. The criminal justice system isn't working. But then they came up with some interesting ideas that you just wouldn't have thought of, I think, in a different way.
I'm fascinated by the thought of doing it with third graders. I participated in an international research study, and across cultures, the American 14-year-olds knew least about the UN Convention of Children's Rights than any other nationality.
We don't teach it here.
No.
It's too controversial, and we are the only country besides Somalia that has not ratified it.
Right.
So, but it's interesting because in this DC school, this is what they teach. And so I'm carving out the participation rights. But they teach the whole convention over the year to the children in the school.
Is it a charter school?
No, it's a public school. It's, yes.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, the Sports for Sharing is, they actually have have done a lot of outcome research in Mexico on how these kids turn out. So it's in the Shaw neighborhood of DC. So I think it'll be really interesting. I have to think of the question.
Yeah.
That's going to be the interesting thing.
Maybe I missed something, but when you have the tables, do you assign people to tables? So do people initially stay with everybody that they already knew? Or do they
We had our students really mix around, and then we put one outside person at each table, and then they could do what they wanted. So this time we have 3 sections. We only had 1 section before, so we'll have 45 students, and then we'll have 15 guests.
But you purposely diversify?
Yes.
It's not just like meet with all my friends? and
No,
talk.
no.
Yeah,
We prepare the students. We have a whole class to prepare them on
okay.
how to do this. But we don't want people to know the question in advance, because then they start doing research and thinking
Yeah.
about it. So nobody really knew what the question was.
With the different rounds, so is each table is answering that same question?
Yes.
You said they move?
So there's round 1,
Uh-huh.
20 minutes. When they're finished with that, they write on the stickies and post them on the board. Then everybody but one person just moves randomly to another table. Then the host who stays says basically what has been discussed, and then they do that round. And then, so there's 3 rounds, and then at the end you go back to your table and we have the big open discussion. I mean, I think you can do it different ways. Whatever you think would work in your setting, yes.
What size classroom and how big a table, how many people on a table do you use the optimal?
We had 5. It's going to be a challenge this time because we have to have it in Boston. We have square tables. So we may end up, I actually bought the tablecloths myself. So if anyone wants to use them, we'll have some that you can use, the red checkered, and we got the flowers and candles. And it really makes people very excited to participate. It's interesting. It's such a simple methodology, but so can you say a little bit more about yours?
The way that they did it is, when we walked in, they did sort of pre-assign us. We were given a little number. And it was interesting because at every table, there was at least one person from academia, at least one person that had some kind of a spiritual base, and at least one person that had some background in psych. And then they purposely put at least 4 students at the table. So because of that diversity, and the moderator is imperative, because
Yes.
they really, if the conversation started to lull, the moderator would pick it back up and get us, back on track. They did tell us which table to go to. So
Yeah, I think you
we
could
had
do it
the
easier,
numbers,
right,
and they
either
said,
way.
okay, when the 20 minutes was up, like I had to go to table 6, 10, and
So they would keep the diversity. What was the question? Did they have one overall question or a lot of overall questions?
One of them that started was, and at this table, it was primarily people in academia and students, is what are the issues of veterans and mental health in academia? So we just sort of brainstormed a little bit. And then the next question was, how do you perceive the public image of mental health and veterans in the community? And in that one, there was a person in my group that did equine therapy with veterans. There was a person that did respite care. It was amazing to me just to sort of have like the experience of standing back a little bit and listening to the dynamics of different people's perceptions of what I thought was a pretty cut and dry issue. I didn't think about that. And then at the end, we had those white sticky, the big tablet sheets to write on, and they put them up at the end, And then as a collective group,
You can walk
we had
around.
to come up with themes. So instead of doing the sticky notes, we sort of did it,
You put up your,
yeah,
Right.
and we did it as a group, and they identified them. And then at the end of it, within a week of the conference, they sent it all out to us by
yes, we did
email.
that also. We actually sent out pictures of everything. But one thing also to tell people is that it's not like an academic assignment that you are supposed to come up with fixing this. You're not supposed to do that. You just talk and see what happens and listen to other people.
Well, and I think that was the power of it, was because it was so, it was like a brainstorm session instead, and they held it in a restaurant, so it's, you know.
You had the tables
were
already.
nice, and it did, I mean, it was exactly as you described it, you know, with moving around, and then throughout the day, there would be an opportunity to have snacks, and they served us lunch, and you ate lunch at a different table than you initially started at. So there was an opportunity throughout the day to be able to meet everybody that was in the room.
And what were some of the insights that came up at the end?
One of the biggest things was the realization that the public image of mental health for veterans and what we perceived of was this far apart. And also the services that were available for them, because this was up in West Virginia, really were not meeting their needs, because there was a group of veterans that also was invited to this. And it was awesome to hear, you know, their perception when we start talking about systems and processes and how does it really work. And you could start to see where were the holes in the system and where did things like stigma and lack of understanding and lack of access really come through. And what the goal was is that they're having one of these every 6 months to keep the
excellent.
dialogue going. That was the commitment that they made. It was very cool, very, very cool.
So if anyone would like any materials, just email me and let me know, or I can lend you my book, although you can get them on Amazon secondhand for not very much. And yes, go.
Sorry, I'm curious because I lived a year in France with a French family, and this was every Sunday. I mean, we sat at the table for 4 hours, and so it's very European. Are these writers from? I'm just curious where they're from.
They're actually American,
They are.
and they started this just accidentally at some coffee they had. They just got the idea, but it has been used a lot in Europe. I think here more in companies that are having problems, and obviously in the VA. And then in Arlington, it's too bad they don't do them anymore, but they had a number of these diversity dialogues where they just got all of these people, some didn't even really speak much English, and got some ideas on how to make diversity work in Arlington.
Well, one thought from Marymount, and Matt and I were just in a discussion on Catholic intellectual traditions, and they were talking about the importance of interfaith dialogue, and so maybe that's something we could talk with the two Brians, but offering that setting to bring students together from
That'd be
different
very
faiths.
interesting.
Like, it sounds like you already have the experience, but that would be a fun way to get the students to talk
Right.
with each other.
And if any of you would like to come to ours, just let me know. It's our last class. I can't remember the exact date, but it's on a Thursday at 11:45 to 2 over in Boston. The last class, not during the exam period. So you're welcome to come and participate. It's called Psychology, Social Policy, and Law. So you're welcome to come and see what it's like. So just let me know, because we have to have the number, if you want to come. Yes?
I'm intrigued about whether you know of any examples of this where it moves beyond a kind of an input to policymakers and instead kind of transforms the policymaking process. It becomes a kind of participatory process where people's, where decision-making authority is actually handed over to groups, to the groups that engage in this, rather than this being, hey, let's engage the public, develop a collective understanding, and then policymakers decide whether they're going to take it into
Do or not.
consideration or not,
Mhm.
right? Or whether this gets used with some of the what you might think of as kind of more radical participatory decision-making alternatives that people are experimenting with around the world.
Yeah, I think it would be good if we could persuade them to do it. For example, on the prison system right now, there really needs to be a lot of input to change it. For example, like solitary confinement, which is a terrible problem, but policymakers aren't very interested in it.
I agree with you, Matt. The one thing I thought about was, again, even if you do CVPR research or all these things we do with communities, vulnerable populations, and where the frustration begins of, okay, but I've talked about this, we know, but where does it go next? Like the frustration of power. If all it is
Yes.
I've raised this and I've got it in consciousness and now I'm blocked.
Were there some policymakers there with you? How did that work with?
At the one that I went to, there was not. I mean, the woman that was in charge of it was at a director level for the local VA. And the way that they explained it to us afterwards, they did not say this in the beginning, was that each of the visiting sites were using this information to then get together and to have the dialogue about how it needed to change. But there wasn't a lot of information sharing about how that part of it would work.
Right. And clearly you need more than one for these
Oh,
processes to work. You have to have it at a certain schedule. But it's interesting because you can get so many community members at once. I think one of the Arlington ones was 100 people. And it actually, they said, worked well. I wish I'd been able to observe, but they did it several years ago. So thanks for coming. And anybody who would like to come, just email me. I'll give you the date and place. So